All right, well, we are on to the last chapter 4, Why Kids Lie in Rapture Talk. And this chapter basically talked about why kids lie and also how to approach that and avoid kids lying. And so, first thing I found interesting was talked about how talking to children when they're lying, it's really hard to tell that they're lying. They actually, with adults and like the FBI, that they have these strategies on determining if an adult is lying. But when they use those same strategies with kids, it's like super hard to tell if the kid is lying. And it even said like a lot of parents were like, well, I can tell when my kid is lying. Maybe I can't tell if other kids are, but I can tell. And so they tested it on parents too, and the parents still also had a hard time deciding and determining whether their child was telling the truth or telling a lie. So, kids are pretty good at making up stories, believable stories. I remember my mom saying this about my younger sister. She would lie a lot when we were kids, and my sister would be telling some story, some lie, and my mom knew that it was a lie because she knew the real facts. But the way my sister was telling it, my mom's like sometimes almost convinced that she was telling the truth. So, yeah, I found that interesting that kids are really good at telling lies, and the older they get, the better they get at telling those lies. So, basically what the book was saying was all kids lie at some point. Some start as early as like 2 or 3, and it just goes on from there. But what it approached was like, why do kids lie in the first place? Like, what gets it in their head that they should do it? Because it did talk about how kids know that like lying is wrong. They can't stand it if a parent says one thing and then does the other, and they think that the parent lied. But basically, what it said is kids lie to avoid punishment and to make their parents happy. There's an example in the book. It says, when children first begin lying, they lie to avoid punishment, and because of that, they lie indiscriminately whenever punishment seems to be a possibility. So, for example, a 3-year-old will say, I didn't hit my sister, even though the parent witnessed the child hit her sibling. And then the 3-year-old will get in trouble for lying, but then when that 3-year-old becomes a 6-year-old, they're not going to make that same type of mistake, and they'll only lie about a punch that occurred when the parent was out of the room. So, like I said, as kids get older, they get a little bit better at lying and making sure what they're saying can be covered up. And then the other thing it talked about was that kids just want to please their parents. They don't want their parents mad at them, and so they'll lie to make them better. And it brought up this example with the boy who cried wolf and George Washington and the cherry tree, and they read these stories to some children and to see if that changed any of the kids' views on lying or in telling the truth. And they did like a poll beforehand asking other adults, like, do you think that the boy who cried wolf story will stop lies, or the cherry tree story will stop lies? And then the boy who cried wolf, because he lied so much, people stopped believing him, and then he got eaten by a wolf. And the cherry tree story, at the end, George Washington's father says, I'm glad that you cut down that cherry tree after all. Hearing you tell the truth is better than if I had 1,000 cherry trees. And a lot of people thought that the boy who cried wolf story would, be the most effective in teaching children that lying is wrong. But when they asked the kids, they actually found the complete opposite, and that more kids who listen to the George Washington story will realize that lying was wrong and that it's better to tell the truth. And So it kind of just shows, like, going back to the slide, like how to stop lying. Instead of always punishing kids and telling them they're wrong and bad for lying, to approach it in a different way. Instead of saying, like, what are you doing? And then they lie and then getting mad that they lied. And instead of saying, like, I'm not going to be upset with you if you peeked, and if you tell the truth, you'll be happy with yourself. That can reduce lying, it says, but going back to always wanting to make the parents happy, if they know that their parents are still going to be happy if they tell the truth, then they're going to want to tell the truth. And so a parent could say, I will not be upset with you if you peeked, and if you tell the truth, I will be really happy. So then the kid is more apt to tell the truth because, one, they know they're not going to be punished for lying, and two, they know that by telling the truth, they're making their parents happy. So it takes out any need for lying right out of the situation. And so how all this can relate to social work, basically it says that instead of always punishing for lying and saying lying is wrong, to approach it and just teach kids when we're working with kids the worth of honesty just as much as the need to say that lying is wrong. So the more kids hear that message, the more quickly they will take this lesson to heart, and they will value honesty above valuing not getting in trouble, and above valuing pleasing their kids or pleasing their parents or pleasing their authority figures like a social worker or a teacher or whoever, and they'll be more apt to tell the truth more often. So social workers, just keeping that in mind when we are working with kids and knowing that they're probably going to lie, but remembering not to approach the act of lying, but to approach them and why honesty should be valued. So yeah, that was Why Kids Lie, Chapter 4. Thanks for listening.